Hebrews 11:6 says, "Without faith it is impossible to please him, for he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him." Hebrews 11 is popularly known as the Hall of Faith. Our author reminds us of many of the characters from the Old Testament that are in our kids' Bible stories books. All the neat stories, all the heroes of the faith of the past are listed here. And there are several things that all these men and women have in common. They were all sinners, to be sure. They all had some flaws and imperfections, like all of us do. Some of them very serious. I think if we had had statues of them in our cities, the cancel culture would want to pull them down. And yet, many of them are called righteous. Here's Abel in verse 4. "By faith, Abel offered a better sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained the testimony that he was righteous." And here's Enoch in verse 5. "By faith, Enoch was taken up so that he would not see death. He was not found because God took him up, for he obtained the witness that before his being taken up, he was pleasing to God." Another way of saying he was righteous. And here's Noah in verse 7. "By which he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness which is according to faith." So how is it that sinners, like these folks are, how can sinners be called righteous? By their faith, of course, which is what they also have in common. Faith not in their own merit, but in God's salvation. Faith in God's mercy, in his grace toward sinners. Faith in his faithfulness to his promises. After listing these men and women of faith, the author points out in verse 39, "And all these, having gained approval through their faith, did not receive what was promised." What? They did not receive what was promised. How can that be? Well, let's go back to Abraham. God had promised him land, the promised land. And yet, verse 10 says, "He was looking for the city which has foundations, whose architect and builder is God." Abraham, it seems, wasn't really expecting dirt. He knew that God was talking about a spiritual inheritance. And that's because of verse 13. "All these died in faith without receiving the promises, but having seen them and welcomed them from a distance, and having confessed that they were strangers and exiles on the earth." And verse 16, "But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them." Their hope, their expectation was not on the things of this physical life. They knew that life was more than just stuff. And they were looking forward to a permanent heavenly inheritance. Now look at this cool verse, verses 24 to 26. "By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to endure ill treatment with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, considering the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking forward to that reward." Did you get that? Moses had his eye on Jesus, and he was willing to suffer all the things that he went through in order to gain Christ. This chapter closes with verse 40. because God had promised something better for us, so that apart from us, they would not be made perfect. We are in on this too. Like them, let us not aim just for the stuff of this world, but let us keep our eye on Jesus and trust His promises for our eternity. He is the rewarder of those who seek Him. And I've gone way over time. Sorry about that. God bless your weekend.